tous. Nous attendions notre dernier orateur, mais le voici, M. Gordon Garnett. Bienvenue pour cette dernière réunion de notre conférence. Nous entrons maintenant dans la ligne droite de cette dernière conférence avec les rapports des différentes commissions, et j'ai demandé aux différents présidents des commissions d'être sur l'estrade ce matin pour nous présenter leurs conclusions. Et bien, sans plus attendre, nous allons demander à Edward pour la première commission, c'est-à-dire la commission Constitution et Réglementation, de venir nous présenter le résultat des travaux qui ont été menés au cours de toute cette semaine. Pour mémoire, avant de donner la parole à Edward, je vous rappelle aussi les canaux pour la traduction. C'est sûrement le moment où il ne faut pas manquer ce qui va être dit. Canal 1 français, Canal 2 anglais, Canal 3 allemand, Canal 4 italien et Canal 5 suédois.
Many thanks, William. Before I start, I just want to express on behalf of attendees at the conference our appreciation to the courtesy that has been extended to us by the officials of Le Trot and the staff. I want to pass on my special thanks to Guillaume, Benoit, Isabel and Marie-Anne. Having been in a similar situation, I know the extra workload this creates for them, and that their busy normal work doesn't stop, and then we've had a conference imposed on the top of it. So I think they've done an outstanding job, and from my perspective I'd like to convey my appreciation to them. It gives me pleasure to report on the Constitution Committee. We met over the 3 days and had some quite rigorous debate. The main item that we did at the meeting was review the Constitution. It became apparent that the Constitution had been in place for a number of years and hadn't been reviewed, and there were particularly clauses in that were outdated. So we decided to go through it in detail and try and have the Constitution reflect what the practice of the conference is and the agreements between the countries. So you'll have the minutes in front of you. Actually, here we go. The major changes that we're proposing to the Constitution was an inclusion of an objective to implement the provisions of the International Agreement on Trotting Races. Now that's subject to the local restrictions that may apply, but the principle is that all countries should be looking to try and get greater consistency and uniformity where we can. So that was probably the major discussion point, and what was agreed at the meeting is that the non-UET countries would review the Pink Book and come back to the 2014 interconference meeting and report areas of that agreement that they comply with and areas that they don't comply with. And once we determine what those areas are that countries don't comply with, it gives us a ground to actually work to try and address those and to see if we can introduce greater uniformity. The other amendments that we're proposing to the Constitution were relatively straightforward. We proposed a deletion of the clauses re associate membership. The feeling was that just isn't used, that we have full members of the conference, and there's the ability for the host country to invite non-member countries to attend. So we felt that was sufficient. There was no need there for a clause for an associate member. We also agreed that the minutes of the conference meetings should be circulated within 2 months of the conference's conclusion. And for future conferences, our intention would be that the Constitution Committee should meet separately to the other committees. So this may be the afternoon before the conference or in the mornings prior to the conference. The aim being that there'd be one delegate from each country would attend the Constitution Committee, and then other individuals could or the members of the Constitution Committee would be then free to attend 2 of the other 4 subcommittees. The other probably major change that was recommended from the Constitution Committee was that currently changes to the Constitution require a 50% majority. The feeling of the Constitution Committee was that this should be increased to a 2/3 majority, that we shouldn't be looking to change the Constitution unless there's greater support for it. We also included within the Constitution just some provisions relating to the reporting of future World Driving Championships, just so it's quite clear what happens. All we're doing there is just reflecting what is common practice. We also include in the Constitution now an appendix listing who are the member countries of the International Trotting Association. Obviously there was quite a lot of discussion, and I think there's no news to this and probably will be covered more from the Racing and Wagering Committee, that the leakage of wagering to offshore operators and the intellectual property around the racing continue to be the major issue facing the industry globally. There was support from our committee for the principles outlined in Chapter 8 of the International Agreement. And this was, and the key aspect of this is that there is a clause in there that countries should aim to receive a minimum product payment of 8% on turnover within their country and a minimum of 3% on overseas turnover on their races. Now that may not be possible in every country depending on what their funding and their arrangements are with their TABs and the like. However, it was felt having that clause in may give some teeth to countries in having discussions with their government or their wagering operators. So there was support for that clause. And as I say, the other point there I've just touched on earlier was that we'd report back to the 2014 interconference on areas where countries don't comply with the Pink Book. And the aim with that agreement would be that in future we would be able to list, similar to what the thoroughbred international racing agreements do, where you list all the countries who comply, and then you may list a country complies with all of this chapter apart from clause X. So it will be quite clear in the agreement which countries comply. So they were the changes to the Constitution that are proposed, and I put them before this committee now for consideration. The other issue that the Constitution Committee considered was the life membership of the International Trotting Association. Before I do that, we noted that there had been some passing of former members of that committee. In particular, I think Bruce Skeggs from Australia had passed away since our last meeting. So possibly can I ask you all to be upstanding for a moment's respect for previous members of the International Trotting Association who have passed away. Thank you. So now that we've dealt with the past ones, let's deal with the future ones. It gives me great pleasure to announce that the Constitution Committee are recommending 3 new members, life members of the International Trotting Association, and they are Ulf Holmberg of Sweden, John Pierre Kratzer of Switzerland, and Philip Langley of the United States of America. At this point, can I ask President Balik to come forward and make a presentation to the 3 individuals? Well, the only other two issues that I have left to confirm are just the roster for future World Conferences. The immediate schedule that concerns us. In 2015 we will have the few barbies and shorts and jandals, or thongs they call them in Australia, and we'll head to 2015 will be in Australia. 2017 is back to Europe, and Sweden has been confirmed as the host for 2017. In 2019 we will be off to Canada. So that's the roster for the future conferences. The only other major aspect that was considered at the meeting was confirmation that the UET will maintain the official record of minutes and reports from World Conferences for historical purposes. That's just so that we have a permanent record of what's considered at conferences going forward. So that brings me to the conclusion. I'd like to thank very much the members of the committee, in particular Benoit for all his hard work in trying to pull what we did into make some sense of what we did and write it up. So thank you very much. While I'm here, can I move the adoption of the report from the Constitution Committee? Seconded by Dominique. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Thank you very much.
Je vais donner la parole maintenant à Monsieur Geoff, qui a été le président de la commission Courses et Paris, qui va vous présenter les conclusions des travaux de cette semaine.
Thank you, Guillaume, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Could I just add at this stage, on a personal note, as Edward already did, my thanks to Trotting and all their staff and everybody associated with the organisation of this conference. It's been a fantastic week in Paris. I thought a great ending to it, or not an ending to the conference, but a great finale in some respects. Obviously today I'm looking forward to this afternoon. I was very impressed with the show last night. I was particularly taken with the costumes. And I don't know how we can match that in Sydney in 2 years' time, although I was going to mention this later to some of you. We do have on at the same time you're going to be in Sydney a great celebration. It's the world-famous gay and lesbian Mardi Gras. So if any of you want special tickets or whatever, we can probably help you out in that regard. But on to more serious matters. But again, thank you, Trotting. It's been fabulous. And while I'm on thanks, before I give the findings of the committee, a big thank you to the members of the committee for their participation, and particularly to Alex Renault, who I hope that's correct pronunciation, and for his work as the secretary. He had to put up with me. He did have to ask me a few times, like the interpreters, to slow down with my speech. And also, he was hoping to change my accent, but sorry, Alex, I am what I am. But thank you very much. Look, on to the serious business of that. We only have one slide, and I make no apologies for that. I think Alex was a little concerned that we weren't pulling our weight in this regard, but I told him that I would talk for a lot longer than one slide. The first point there is a very important point, which is, I put it there. I wanted it to be made as our initial point for a very good reason. This was, as you all know, the first meeting that we've had at the World Conferences of the Races and Wagering Committee. And one of the problems we found when we went in, we had no minutes from previous meetings to use as a guideline. There were no subjects from previous meetings to pick up on and to follow up, or matters arising from the minutes. So we were starting afresh in terms of this particular committee or commission. It was not an easy task, or as easy as one might think, to come up with an agenda, which was the first item that the members had to discuss. And the major reason for that was that there was a great deal of duplication across the various committees. And I'll mention some of those later in it. But, I mean, on our opening day, both Dominique and Jacques, in their opening addresses, referred to a number of important issues that I personally thought should have been discussed at this committee, but were actually discussed at other committees. So Edward referred to one earlier, which is the matter that Jacques and Jean-Pierre were so keen to get across the line, which we eventually did on the, pardon me, the funding issue and return to our jurisdiction. So there was no point in discussing that again in the Races and Wagering Committee. So from the next conference on, it is strongly recommended that all agenda items must be submitted for committee meetings by members in advance by 3 months to enable a proper preparation of agendas for the committees to be distributed to members so that the people who will be participating in the various committees can actually be aware, they can be prepared, they can understand what their jurisdictions, the points of view they wish to put. That doesn't mean that we can't have a late item, that something that's happened, we don't want to be too rigid, but certainly the major work of the committee should be set out, and I would suggest that should apply to all committees. We can then look to see if there's any duplication across those committees and determine which is the rightful place to consider it. So that is a very firm recommendation. And just to give you a feel for the rest of the work of the committee, we didn't sit idle. I thought there was some very valuable input. The second issue that we've talked about there is industry funding. That we devoted more than the first session was devoted to the agenda and discussing industry funding, not to the extent, obviously, that we did in the Constitution Committee, which was a very robust debate and an interesting one, with a good outcome, I have to say. But we went round, we got an overview of the situation in each country. There's a summary of that Alex has put into the minutes that you have to take away with you. There is no doubt that we need to be vigilant to protect our market in all our jurisdictions and our revenue, our market and our revenue. And I believe that while we face challenges today, and this came clear from the discussions that were had in the meeting, while we have challenges that we face, there are many ahead of us as well, and we need to be vigilant at all times in meeting those challenges. And forums like this are a good place for us to compare our views, to compare notes, and to work out how we best meet those challenges. The wagering is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I'd like to be more successful at it myself. Pardon me. And but we did have a general discussion on the current wagering situation, and particularly threats to our existing funding models. Obviously, I think in my home country in Australia and Edwards of New Zealand, down under, as we say, we seem to have more threats from corporate bookmakers and betting exchanges and the like. They are threats that they are things that have hurt us very badly, our revenue models, in the last 10 years. But I firmly believe we've turned the corner there but it took very costly legal battles went to the highest court in the land, and we eventually triumphed there, which was a cause for great celebration, I have to say. I'll be happier when they get to the percentage that Jacques talked about. When we can get them to 8%, that'll be even better. But we've had wins, and it was very important for us to establish that beachhead, if you like, in the battle against the corporates. So anyhow, this isn't about Australia, but I make that point. We seem to have a few more issues on this front than in Europe and North America. We talked also in wagering about the need to try and attract younger people to wagering and to attend the racetrack, to grow our fan base. But I think, it would be delightful if I could stand here today and say we found a solution. Obviously, we don't have one, but it's, again, something we all need to keep working towards. we also talked about new bet types, and if there's any, and I think Phil Langley made the point that I think around the world we've probably tried everything there is to try at the moment. Yes, again, it'd be lovely if we could find something new and exciting that was going to stimulate our market and stimulate our wagering turnover, but we don't have it at the moment. We talked about racing regulation. This was, I referred earlier to the fact that in the duplication that we had in the agendas, among the items that were mentioned on day one of the conference were, from the UET General Assembly, were the issue with whips. Our understanding, we were informed that that was being discussed in equine health and integrity. There was a couple of other points that fell into that as well that were being discussed by other committees. There was a brief mention of safety vests, and of the members present at that particular session, every jurisdiction had safety vests. In Australia, they're compulsory not just in races but in training and what have you. And we got an assessment from people of that. And there was also a request from the UET. We talk about the age of the driver, and we've said this before, that in some markets we couldn't impose limits on the age of drivers because it's in breach of the anti-discrimination laws, it seems, as discriminatory behaviour. There was also some discussion on differences with rules in disqualifications and different interpretations on when the horse should be disqualified, and also on wagering issues such as bracketing of runners, which is commonplace in the United States. But we had no resolution of those issues, I'm sorry to say. We also discussed I guess we had the longest discussion we had was on internationalisation of trotting. It was a subject that everyone was keen to put their views forth. We talked about exchanging product, distribution of vision, cross-promotion of major races. There was a view that we're all been busy trying to find new markets for our products and exchanging products between jurisdictions, that perhaps we could improve the way we also cooperate on promoting, particularly our major races. That if a country is spending a considerable amount of money on doing a marketing campaign or a promotional campaign for a major race, and that is being beamed into other countries, perhaps they could also help supply some of the promotional material to help in promoting that event in the international marketplace. And we talked about information as well, with in conjunction with exporting a race. And I think it was Guillaume who made the point that we have there is a varying quality, if you like, in the type of information or the range of information that is supplied from various countries when you are importing products. So the exporter in most countries probably has more information, and it's not forthcoming at the moment. Now this comes into two categories. One of the categories of information was in performance data, form as we call it, and the other area, pardon me, was in background on the drivers, the trainers, the racetracks and such like. So we determined that there was a need for exporters to provide more relevant information on races. It was decided that each country, those who, it's not compulsory, those who desire, will provide a rundown of the information they require for product that they are importing to their market. And John Gallinger of Canada has very kindly agreed to collate that material, and we will consider it at the Chief Executive's meeting next year, and discuss it further at the 2015 World Conference, in the hope that we can improve the whole flow of information that goes from exporters to importers. And so that is the report of the Races and Wagering Committee. Again, thank you to those who participated. I do think we can make it a more relevant committee with our in the future when we prepare our agendas properly. Thank you again to Alex for his cooperation, and I'd be happy to move the adoption of the Races and Wagering Committee report. And I've seconded Rod Pollock. Put the motion. All those in favour? Opposed? Declare it carried. Thank you very much indeed.
Gordon Garnett va nous présenter maintenant les conclusions de la commission santé, équine et intégrité.
Monsieur le Président, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, je voudrais un grand merci à la France pour la conférence et spécialement à Isabelle, Jennifer et Marianne. Grand merci. I was honoured to be given the job of chairing this committee and could certainly talk for the rest of the day on the things that we have covered. It was a very easy job for me because the committee was full of enthusiasm, passion and especially knowledge from all different areas, whether somebody was an expert horseman or involved in testing, veterinary expertise, and there's a man who really made this committee happen, and that is Arnaud. And thank you very much, Arnaud. Our sport has a pair of passive parties, the horse and the sport itself. The horse has no choice in the matter of whether it is abused physically or whether it is abused by the administration of drugs and chemicals and foreign materials. The sport is passive. It itself cannot stop the damage which is caused by either inhumane treatment of horses or drug abuse. We, the people involved in the governance of the sport, are the only people who can do something to affect and change these two areas of operation. And the results of us not doing something are very simple. People stop coming to the tracks, they stop gambling, and they stop keeping horses. So that as much as any aspect of our sport, the future lies in our hands. We are the only people who can do anything about it. Now, we looked at a vast array of issues, and the minutes which are available to you of the committee cover some very interesting things, but by their very nature, only an outline. And should you want any more information on any matter, please contact us and we will be delighted to help you. We looked in detail at a code of conduct for welfare guidelines in harness racing. Such a code exists in the UET. And every country said, yeah, this is a great idea and we would like to adopt it, but there are differences in different countries. So, for instance, we can fully appreciate why Europe does not want trotting hobbles, but in other jurisdictions, it would be impossible to race pacers without hobbles, and I can assure you that these are not a restrictive device, they are not cruel, they just help the horse really get round a bend. And if pacers were raced on Vincennes, which you never know, it might happen, I don't think they would need hobbles. So what we have said is that we are all going to go away and work on this and come up with a code of conduct that we can all sign up to, but perhaps not too prescriptive. We do not work, does not tell us exactly what to do, but it tells us what we should be doing. We spent a lot of time on the use of the whip. And there again, there are differences, that the majority of countries race with a rein in each hand at all times during the race, and some countries race where you can put the reins in one hand at the end of the race and then use the whip. And there is no common consensus of what is the right way. What I can say is that the Canadian rules are very, very good to cover whip use. They're excellent rules. We looked, as was discussed a bit yesterday, the issue of barefoot racing. And every country does it to some extent, but some countries do it more than others. And there's a research project being carried out on that, so that in 2 years' time we will know a lot more about the subject. We considered anabolic steroids. In some parts of the world, their use is banned totally. Of course, they're banned totally in competition, but in some countries, under veterinary supervision, they are allowed in the treatment of a horse, but not the racing of a horse. We looked at international screening limits. Now, this is a very interesting area. And for a better understanding of the subject, ISLs are not a threshold. They are a level of detection recommended for laboratories. They are a foundation for harmonisation. There is not necessarily a need to publish the information in the rules, but each lab should adopt that ISL. Yes, it can make licence holders aware, but there should be no fear of publication. The tolerances which are set are such that if a licence holder, a trainer, was capable of working to them, he can be assured that they do not have any effect on the performance of the horse. Of course, we looked at Lasix. And in the majority of the world, Lasix is prohibited. But, as we know very well, Lasix is allowed in America and Canada. But I can assure colleagues that the American decision was not taken lightly. I can't give you the answer of whether, and this committee cannot give you the answer, of whether Lasix should be allowed or not. The majority of the world does not allow it. Canada and America does. And they have not taken that decision lightly. It has been after extensive scientific examination. But to quote Mr. Phil Langley, the view in America is that Lasix is not a serious issue. We should be now concentrating our efforts on the drugs that are developing, the substances which we don't know about, and the ones that are very, very difficult to detect. Growth hormones are banned in the vast majority of rules. However, there are issues with the detection of growth hormones, and I'm pleased to say that France is well ahead of the game in this particular matter. Growth hormones can make a difference, and they can completely wreck the horse in a short period of time. Work is being done to establish thresholds for the invidious use of those substances. There's also the issue of secretagogues, which is an administration where the horse increases its own growth hormone. We looked at boldenone, and there's a lot of controversy in the area of boldenone. Can a horse make it itself? Can it be affected possibly by feces from racing pigeons? It's a complex area. There are no simple answers on boldenone. We spent a lot of time talking about equine infectious anemia. Now, this is a very serious thing. It probably comes out of Romania, and ministries of agriculture, if they find it, will slaughter horses and shut down establishments, whether it's a racetrack or whether it's a breeding farm or a training stable. It's a serious matter. The best test for it is the Coggins test, and it's important that when we are moving horses, as we all do, that we have regard to the possibility of contamination from equine infectious anemia. We spent some time on snake venom. Now, snake venom has been around for a long, long time. The principal source of it at one stage was a serpentarium in Florida, where the owner milked snakes and processed the venom, and it is especially useful in treating pain in the lower leg of a horse. So you've got a horse with a sore foot. If you inject round the coronet band, you can improve that horse a lot and win races with it. And for a long time, it has been impossible to detect, but work in Australia and especially France now means that we can find it and take action. But there are other drugs coming from non-vegetable and mammalian sources. So there is a drug out there which is made in Ireland called Prialt. It's a very, very good painkiller. It's designed for humans, and it comes from the venom of the conical sea snail. And there's a whole load of things in development that comes from these very strange exotic sources. Some trainers, would you believe it, apply shockwave to their horses. They give them shocks before the race on the basis that perhaps it increases cortisol, it numbs lameness. Impossible to detect, but something that we might find in out-of-competition testing. Blood doping has been around for a long time. I think it was first used in the 1950s. The famous Finnish marathon runner Lasse Viren used blood doping, and it's simply putting more blood into the horse. Does it have an effect? Well, a horse has a huge store of blood in its spleen. It probably doesn't have an effect. Do people do it? Yes. And tests will be developed to find out what the ambient level of blood is in a horse. We considered EPO. We considered ethanol, a type of alcohol. I've heard of people giving horses a shot of vodka before a race. Does it do any good? Probably not, but it's used. We considered the management of mares in heat and whether we should allow the use of Regulate under veterinary supervision and notification to the racing authority. But perhaps the main thing that came out of the committee was the very positive desire to do something, that the sins of omission are worse than the sins of commission. That this committee will not stop its work today and will contact each and every jurisdiction asking for the name and email address of a dedicated person to take our work forward, the specific things that we have to do, and the ethos, the principles of the committee. We will be asking you what you are doing and what you have done. The committee will be proactive, it will not be reactive. And I'd now like to finish on IRIS. This is something that has sprung from the loins of Canada. John Blankney introduced it in New Zealand in 2007. A lot of work has been done. IRIS stands for the International Racing Integrity and Information System. It was discussed at depth at last year's Chief Executives meeting, and it was endorsed personally by President de Bellaigue. Merci, Monsieur de Bellaigue. I would like now to call on my friend Andrew Kelly to talk for a few moments on IRIS. Andrew.
Thank you, Gordon. Do we have a fast forward button? I won't hold you too long other than to just provide an update on the work of the IRIS committee, and I think we've got this one coming. Good. As Gordon outlined, there was agreement at the conference in New Jersey of the establishment of a working committee who would continue to meet between then and now to consider what type of information, security levels, and how the database would actually be stored and worked. Okay, not quite yet. So, what has been happening? I will just move ahead. In January of this year, IRIS, for all intents and purposes, became live. Since January, we've been having interaction with IRIS. There has been the sharing of information starting, albeit in a test sense. It is working. I know that some Australian stewards have been sharing information with Canadian stewards, and that the various levels of information sharing within the database is continuing to both improve, but is also practically able to be applied. Reid Sanders from Harness Racing New South Wales, who is with us in the room today, has been using it on almost weekly basis. Within the database itself, there are 4 levels of security. There is an open unit available for everyone to see, and then there are various levels of security built within it, which includes one level of just information sharing or workspace to be able to talk about. For example, we heard about Boldenome before, and I've used this example before. Boldenome was found in Australia not long after it was found in France, but there was no great sharing of the information, and maybe at that time there would have been an opportunity to start to look at how has this come about. We haven't seen it for a long time, and suddenly here it is. At a similar time in Canada, there was a clandestine lab that was found by WADA that had a number of Boldenome syringes within it. So these are the type of collaborative efforts and discussions that can start to take place very quickly, live, real time, and the stewards and integrity officers in each of the jurisdictions can react far more quickly, or start to ask questions, or change their testing regimes. What are they looking for at certain times? We can dial up or dial down the various substances that might be looked at any time. I can't speak more highly of this program from Australia's perspective. How other jurisdictions view the ongoing work of this particular committee is something for them to consider, but certainly from Australia's perspective, we will continue to work with the Canadians very closely, regardless of what happens with the rest of the jurisdictions, because it is seriously the way of future fighting against corruption. Information will be the king, and that is how we will broaden our knowledge and become, as Gordon said before, less reactive and starting to be ready when things emerge more readily. So that is an overview of IRIS. I give a free plug and pat on the back to the Ontario Racing Commission. They have funded this project to this point. I also make no bones about it from Australia's perspective. We would like to joint partner with them at some point in the future, if in fact we get to that need or that point. And the governance structure is part of the next level of discussion in terms of not-for-profit organisation with boards of directors, rules of association to determine which changes would be made at which time and how that will be managed. So it's reasonably exciting, and it certainly works. Thank you for your attention.
To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot understate the value of IRIS. It's already in its juvenile days having benefits. Information that we have discovered in Britain has helped the Ontario Racing Commission take action. So that I can assure you it does work, and I commend it to all of you. I think it's up to me now to put forward the motion that the minutes of the committee be adopted. Could somebody second them, please? Thank you, Mark. All those in favour? Right. And I would just like to say that it's au revoir to La Belle France. You will have to say goodbye to the girls from the Lido, learn how to, or get involved in reading the poetry of Banjo Patterson, and learn how to say good day, mate, and pom. Thank you all very much.
Nous allons donner la parole maintenant à Rod Pollock, qui a présidé la commission de l'élevage, de nous faire part des conclusions de ce groupe de travail.
Good morning, delegates, former colleagues, and friends. Everyone has a status here. Mine is retired, and by the great gratitude for this body, a life member. I can only compliment my prior speakers, including former Chairman Geoff Want, on the great effort that's been undertaken by our French colleagues in this environment. I thank Dominique and Jacques greatly for their contribution over the years and the fact that they are still here contributing so positively. And all the others, and I compliment those life members who joined that August group this morning. Importantly, with the breeding committee, we're a significant technical group, and as such, we attract the key veterinary people from your jurisdictions and bodies. And it really is tremendous to see the contribution that that committee has undertaken. It goes in with a blank sheet and comes out sometimes with solutions that we can implement in a practical sense. We drafted and kept our agenda open right throughout the days of the meeting. We came up with recommendations which we hope that you will consider, evaluate and implement into the future. Yep. Voila. Thank you. We've endeavoured to try and put perspective into the future, recognising what we've done and knowing that we're building on the past. We would like you to have a look at the standardisation of data and additional needs requirement into the future, and that's a task which Andrew is going to contribute to, I'm sure, into the future. We'd like to see that information forwarded annually. It's no longer something that we can afford to take over 2 years. We want it annually, and we want more. The more for less concept was advanced. Well, that's what we're here for. We know that we interchange information between each other, but we want access to it for all. And we want to have a look at a rolling 5 years, so it's up to date, and we can identify trends from it and drill down into that documentation where necessary. Importantly, in a specific area, we'd like the registrars of jurisdictions to consider identifying and collecting information on the usage of foal production of frozen and semen and chilled semen to ensure the integrity of the process. We all know that a straw can be split many times, and there is an illegal grouping out there that allows horses. Or it may be that frozen semen is used to produce a number of foals. And your restrictive covenants on registration may mean the inseminator and the breeder and the owner pick the one that's best and leaves the others out, not to go forward. They become horses of other applications. We think we'd like to know the key productive data. Sweden, Christina Olsen provided an excellent paper in that area. We commend it to you so that those sort of things, so that the transacting parties can look at it and have a look, key and preserve the integrity that is there. Importantly, we would like to see the uniform rule of ownership breeder. That is that the foal is, we sampled everybody, and everybody, with one exception, Australia, believe that the ownership of the foal is the owner of the broodmare. In Australia we do it, a current change some time ago now, is that the owner is at the point of conception. If we're having uniform rules, some you win, some you lose, as they say. Importantly, we want to see our industry participants correctly looked after and maintained. The owner and breeder pays for the transaction, but the stud master or the inseminator are key in the process, and their efficiency means whether we have a foal or not. So we would like to ensure that you have the restrictive covenants that are there, that you preserve them, and you do not give the certificate of service or other item until the requisite fees are paid. We're not here to put people out of business, we want to grow our business. And unfortunately, in the breeding area, the numbers are not coming through, and we want to make them as convenient and easy for us, provided the integrity is concerned. We would like to ensure that there is an international database which has multiple applications, but it's a large and hard thing to do to get everybody to fund, prioritise and change a major system. So we see, provided everybody has access and interchanges information, we see that as more than a viable option. So we would suggest that that is a priority we do, so that we can make information work and go round for all of us. One of the areas we looked at as well is the documentation surrounding stud book registration and identification practices. We have tattoos, freeze branding, microchips, microchip readers, some with ISO compliance, others not. We have DNA. We don't have preferred uniformity of markers. We should have. Embryo and transport considerations, passports, assessment certificates, certificates of serving and covering, unique equine life numbers, health certificates, proposed iris development, export certificates with correct things, passports, and we do it all again and duplicate it electronically. We'd like you to consider, stand back. We'd rather have the money spent on administrative processes going into your stake money or back to your people who make it happen, owners or breeders. And we'd just like to suggest to you to think about that. This has created a bureaucracy that has developed over time, and sometimes you have to review it. The people who take all their forms and put them around all the walls of their offices and decide we do, we don't, we do, that's a valuable business commercial consideration, which you do in varying degrees, but we suggest you do it regularly. Passport documentation was considered as an area that members are involved in, particularly with breeding and transferring of livestock across international borders. We have become an increasingly global business. Our industry participants want convenience. They want good, effective, quick answers. As administrators, we want to have integrity in our transactions so that they do belong and they're able of capably going with the horse when it covers borders. The group have put forward a select working party. Please excuse me, Anders, our friend from Norway, his name is included in there now. We've put another of his colleagues. So I apologise, Anders, for that omission. There's a small group from both North America and Canada to review the processes of import and export between the two key numbers in terms of areas in those jurisdictions, so that export for breeding and racing can be looked after. They can come to an agreement and that can operate to make it more convenient. Okay? And that's important. We want our people using their best abilities and their resources, and we've asked that they meet, talk and communicate and have that completed by the end of December, have it out for people to look at and come back to the Chief Executive's meeting in the mid-year, but with the positive things. Don't wait. You don't have much risk in this sort of area, but it can help your registrars and people in doing it. We believe there's outstanding systems, and I know that Andrew, for example, is centralising things in Australia, and it's a project long overdue, and it's good to see. Interconnectivity between systems and information is important. We're asked to look at a number of regulation areas. And the Breeding Committee, with its key veterinary information, will continue to support the legislators of policy and everything like that. And it's important that those views be recognised. But similarly, when you're putting up technical issues, there should be briefing papers and other items that support the people, the consensus that is derived. The Breeding Committee supports the recommendation on those areas from the Chief Executive's meetings, and it also supports the key areas and the penalties that have been put. But we have put the rider in that, yes, we would also like to consider the scientific identification, the ratification and the determination necessary in implementing these policies. And it's important that these, and it was good to hear from Geoff Watt that these items are going to be done and put out there 3 months earlier in the future. Please understand many of these things, and that's a commendable thing by the Constitution Committee, have been dealt with in the past. They are not new. And those of you who have attended a number of these meetings know that. That will ensure that that occurs into the future. We talked about research as part of our item in our charter, and importantly, there is a ton of research in every area, every dimension and every issue occurring. We commend it to you, but we'd like to tell you where it is, but we have no means of doing that. So we suggested on your host member website, you make it important and put it up there, because if you don't do it, the other regulators in government will enforce it upon you. We talked about an equine health magazine, which is very good in America, called The Horse. It also provides significant electronic newsletters. So we've got a couple of members of our committee having a talk to them to see if we can not register on an individual basis, but on an institutional basis, so that we can bring positive, good, well-credentialed information to our industry participants. We commend it to you. The last area that was significant to us was breeding owner and broodmare ownership considerations. You have many restrictive policies, but we don't have many horses. In some of our environments, others do. We want to preserve the stud book and its integrity. We went out to find out who registers their people as owners of broodmares and who licenses them. In Australia, I'm aware that in the thoroughbreds, one jurisdiction in Victoria is looking at the question of licensing as opposed to registering owners, to have more power to be able to investigate integrity. We in our thing at harness racing, and most of the members here, they're registered, and we find that is sufficient. The stud book publication has been a debate of the past. Most of them are electronic. Ireland, France, United States and Russia produce a hard book as well. But increasingly, we are becoming electronic. So we can commend that to you. One of the other areas we looked at was sales. And there is a growing propensity that these be done and conducted electronically. It's the growing market, the same as the wagering. We also took advice on the varying breeding incentives that we have. And these things make the difference, because breeding is a discretionary activity. You don't have to do it. And we're dropping back to the people who have great passion or love for their horses. But we don't want to lose those little guys who produce the small numbers, and we have seen the statistics. So we're suggesting to you that as our final recommendation, you provide information of your breeding incentive schemes to each other, or on a national supportive statistical database if we can do it. You do it prominently in your own distinct jurisdictions, but the national and global consequences are to assist everybody to do it. In concluding, I would like to thank the committee of the Breeding Committee for their endeavours and their debate which was both active and strong. Importantly, we'd also like to thank Valerie for her secretaryship in making the administrative task of reporting easier. In conclusion, I'd like to move the receipt and adoption of the committee's report. Do I have a seconder, please? Phil Langley. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Merci Rod. Nous allons terminer cette première partie de la matinée avec Andrew Kelly, qui a été le président de la commission marketing et communication.
Thank you again. How are we going for time, Guillaume? How are we for time? Yeah? 50 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I know. I wish to echo the sentiments of the speakers before me in their thanking all of the organisation committee. So, Mr. President, thank you very much, and Guillaume, Benoit, etc. Particularly the Secretariat staff who have been very, very busy throughout the conference, both in the daytime and the night time. So, well done. In terms of our work with the Marketing Committee, let's see how we go. We had a good team. That was most important. So it was good to have a team of people who were passionate about their industries and very keen to explain what they've been up to. So I thank them very much for their contribution. In terms of the topics which were discussed, the majority of these topics came from the previous year's or previous conference minutes. The most important, I suppose, of which was to build on the fan base. And most jurisdictions are continuing to work around event-based marketing, people to the track for their major carnivals, but the success seems to be coming from syndication. There's no doubt about that, particularly the Scandinavian countries have had terrific success with almost 100,000 new owners introduced to the sport in a very short period of time through their syndication networks. That's been able to be measured in its success not only by the number of people but also those who are attending the tracks, those that are reinvesting in purchasing back either the horse that they drew in the first instance, or they're getting involved with buying new horses. But they are contributing to the economy of the industry through their attendance at the tracks, through their wagering, through their purchase of food, merchandise, other such activities. And the extension of the syndication program with websites, with television programs, is certainly, from my own perspective, was fascinating to hear more and more about. So that is building the fan base. Social media, we all know, is playing a major role in our communities or societies at the moment, and building the online or social media community is going to be crucial for us. I know Isabel has been putting this page up for people to give us and supply their website address, their Twitter handle, and their Facebook pages. And there's some countries which we haven't yet got that information for, but before you go on the bus today to the races, if you can take 1 minute and fill in this form for us, then that is one of our recommended outcomes completed from the committee, because we can distribute this information and we can all start to follow each other more and more, just as and build our own community and understand what each other are doing. The benefits of the social media programs that people have been implementing in their jurisdictions is not just the promotion of the sport, but the way in which you can shut down the rumours really, really quickly. If you have an official handle on behalf of a jurisdiction and there is some mixed messages or some rumours that are running rife, then you can stop them in their tracks. But it also doesn't come without its pitfalls. It's a media in which the diversity of views are held above all else. So expect some controversial comments, expect some people to be pretty personal in their reactions to certain decisions which are taken, but the overall benefit outweighs the some of those more negative aspects. I think at the end of the day, it is a place where people can share their views, and that's what's important. What are we up to now? So, cross-promotion of racing or international races, and this was touched on in the Racing and Wagering Committee as well. But what we are doing is that we will put together a feature race calendar with everyone's major races, Group 1s, Group 2s, and we will have a calendar whereby we can follow at all times which countries, which jurisdictions, which tracks are actually having major races coming online shortly. It will be a place where the promotion and advertising can be seen from each country. Those who are able to, the live streaming of those events would be of great benefit, and if not live streaming, then definitely the replays of those particular events. I think that can become a very important hub to promote each other's activities, because you don't always even have to understand the language to understand the story that's being told, and to take that interest in each other's activities. A buddy system. Okay, so we've established that Ireland and South Africa, and I'm not wishing to embarrass them in any way here, are constantly looking for ways in which we, as other jurisdictions, can help, can promote, can assist. Well, if we actually set up a buddy system whereby a larger organisation can work closely with and be available on the phone with advice, that will be a great benefit, I think, to those countries, and I'm sure that Australia will certainly be keen to assist as a buddy along those lines. Rod Pollock has agreed to put a small paper together to look at sister tracks or sister cities. At local government level, this works really well between countries, where you find a community that is similar to yours, with a similar economy, with similar views, and we think that we can do that with tracks and become sister tracks around the world, with again utilising the population, the economy, the size of the track, the culture, etc., and start to share that information in race books and on websites and with links, etc. It's a small thing, but it's a way of bringing us all closer together and being able to help each other. The marketing communication database update, and John POLLOCK was the star of the show with this particular outcome. And we thank you, John, and the USTA for the work that you've put into this particular issue. It's been on the agenda now for 3 years, and a website by the name of Huddle, HUDDLE.com, has been found. It's a web-based solution, and Mike and Phil, I'm not sure if you're aware yet, but John made it very clear that you guys will fund that for the foreseeable future, which may be a very long one, but we'll see how we go with that. It's an opportunity for two users per ITA country or member country to have access to this database portal, where you can see what other countries are promoting from a marketing perspective, and people can load information on there. Once you load information, it sends a message to everyone else who's a member of this particular community, and it will be a great reference point, I've got absolutely no doubt. And I think it can expand beyond from the capability that John showed us with his demonstration. The capability will extend beyond just marketing and promotional type activities. So that will be very good to watch, and there's a 1 September deadline on that, in terms of John being in touch with everyone to give him the details of the two people who would have the administrative wherewithal to access that particular database. One of the more entertaining areas of our committee is to determine the award winners. in the various categories each year. So I will now go through that. We're ready to go. Yes, and I'll call on the President to make his way forward to present the awards to the successful winners. And it was a very difficult decision in many, many cases. We have, can I just have one for one moment to just, one of the awards, just to show how. So I've not seen this before, maybe it has happened previously, but there is a very, very nice award, and it's inscribed already for the winners. It will cost you a lot in excess baggage to get it home, but it will be definitely worth it. And I'll call now the winners. Australia, whoa, Category 1, how about that? So this was Category 1, Best News Article. It was a high impact, important news article of urgent industry news. This was the High Court decision with relation to the product fee to be paid to the Australian industry. It was really run and won by administrators in New South Wales, and a terrific outcome for our industry. So, Mr. Want, if you can accept this award. Category 2. The winner from Canada. All hail the Pale. A comprehensive, well-developed and written article with styled inserts of photos featuring key aspects, Sandpale's racing performance at the elite level, incorporation of the trainer's background, family and human interest approach outlines the effective training approach adopted. So congratulations. Okay, best photograph. A very difficult decision, but I think the right one at the end of the day. Italy. No, well done. Category 4. Best printed or web-based advertisement. The winner, Australia. Aussie music star teams with Harness Racing New South Wales. We'll now play this one for you. So this was web-based advertisement. That's enough, come on. The next category, Category 5. Best video or film advertisement? France. It was explained that it was very important to promote the night racing aspect to France's racing program for various reasons. It's and I'm sure that particular advertisement it would be very helpful. What are we up to? Category 6, the winner is Sweden. Fantastic. This is for a best television program or documentary. I mentioned before that one of the pleasing aspects to come out of the committee discussion was the way in which the syndication program in Sweden has been built upon, and they now have a 5-minute program every week to highlight exactly what they're doing with horse ownership, and we will play a little bit of that now. Just a small fraction, Benoit.
Snart ska ni få reda på lite mer om den här snygga och förstås
Okay. So I'm sure you get the idea. We had to cut that short, unfortunately, but a terrific concept, and I take my hat off to you. Congratulations to Sweden. Category 7, Best Poster, Norway. For the Oslo Grand Prix 2012. I'm sure you agree, it's quite spectacular. Perfect. There we go. And the final category, category 8, for best website, for publications, organisations or non-commercial entities that appear on the internet, and the winner, a second time, for Sweden. Okay, that concludes. Excellent. Thank you very much. So congratulations to all the award winners. I'll formally move the. Sorry, I should actually speak about this website. This is the front page or the home page of the website that is again built around the 23 horses that are part of the syndication network, an initiative is being undertaken in Sweden, and it is so easy to understand, so easy to move around. It's a terrific concept, and again, the continual building on that has been a real feature and a real eye-opener. I move the discussion points and the outcomes from the marketing committees. Do I have a seconder somewhere, anywhere? Edward, thank you very much. And we'll all accept that, will we? Thank you. That is terrific, and voila, what do we do now? All done. Benoit is very happy. We're on time. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Andrew. Merci beaucoup, messieurs, pour nous avoir présenté les conclusions des travaux menés cette semaine. Je vous propose une pause pour la première partie de cette matinée, pause d'un quart d'heure, et puis je donnerai la parole ensuite au président Dominique de Bellec pour conclure cette conférence. Merci, à tout de suite.